Welcome to a one-off Tab podcast celebrating 15 years that we've been operating in the UK. You'll hear from three of our fantastic franchisees and our head of franchise support. So I'm Ed Reid, I'm the MD of Tab in the UK. I was formerly a franchisee in York and then bought the business with Mags 8 years ago.
So I'm Dave McCartney. I own the franchise territory of Tab Leeds North, and I've now been doing this for 15 years.
Hi, my name is Tom Morton. I am the owner of the Tab franchise in Harrogate, which covers also Skipton, Ripon, Wetherby, Knaresborough. And I've run that for just over 15 years.
Okay, so I'm Julian Smith. I'm based in Derby. I've been involved for 15 years, as we've been talking about. I owned the franchise in Tab Derby until 2019, and now I'm a contract facilitator with Max Crosby Brown and the team based in what is now Tab East Midlands.
Suzanne Bell, head of franchise support at Tab HQ in Leeds.
So guys, welcome to this conversation about the joys, the ups and maybe occasional downs of being a Tab franchisee. Tom, do you want to kick us off with what were you doing pre-Tab, and when you joined, can you remember if you were wanting to move away from something or move towards something?
Oh, what did I do before Tab? Well, I was a chartered accountant in practice, but I escaped. I was a partner in one of the big firms in Leeds for over 25 years, and I ran the office for 15 years. So I know all about herding cats. I left at the end of 2009 and I became a Tab facilitator on the 1st of Jan 2010. Wonderful timing. It was a recession at the time. And I was just behind this gentleman over here. So I'm 006, story of my life. Was I going towards or away? I'd had enough of what I'd done previously. I'd enjoyed it, particularly the running of the firm. But I wanted to do something completely different. And so both, I suppose, really.
Did it turn out to be completely different?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We'll find out more later. Jules, how about you?
So back end of 2009, I was running away from 4 years of interim work, having had a career in manufacturing prior to that in a big PLC, or what became a big PLC. Got made redundant and then did interim roles, but as I say, running away from those because they weren't fulfilling, and trying to find another interim role every other 6, 9, 12 months wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And the family had said, oh, you should be doing your own thing, you should be a cult consultant, they called it back then. And then I'd met your good self in 2009, failed to make the sale, I hasten to add. And we kept in touch, and then we had another conversation beginning of 2010. Then I was introduced to Joe and Paul, and as soon as I met Joe and Paul, I was running towards them because it represented something that I think I'd had the nervousness, if you like, to want to do something on my own, because I said over the years what I didn't want to do was invent a product, sell it and deliver it. And wasn't very familiar with franchising at the time, but then got introduced to Tab, and that's why I ran towards Tab, because it was about purpose, it was about why, it was about having a brand and a head office behind me to support me, because collaboration's at the heart of what we do, and that's very important to me. So yeah, as soon as I met head office, that was it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jules. Dave?
So I was a corporate guy for 21 years, ultimately running a food ingredient business as part of the world's biggest chemical distribution company. That was enjoyable, but the business I was running was in Milton Keynes, and I got a wife and 2 young kids in Leeds, and so didn't quite make a parents' evening for 5 years. Left that business and got involved in a number of privately owned businesses, and was ultimately headhunted to run a spin-out from Harrogate University where I sort of inherited a board of 4 non-executive directors with nothing to prove to me other than trying to help me run a good business. And it was completely eye-opening. They were challenging and demanding, not because they were trying to score points, because generally they wanted to help. It took me a bit of getting used to that. But it was fantastic. But I was still looking to run my own business, but I didn't want to start one from scratch. And then I got introduced to the Alternative Board by a friend in 2009, and it was almost, where do I sign? I got the idea of impartial, real-world advice, because I'd seen that with these non-execs. I'd experienced it, and I thought, crikey, if you can run these alternative boards, or in effect like having 6 or 7 non-execs, I absolutely get the model, I'm in. And so I think it was 005, was I?
Yeah, you're
Just ahead of you, Tom. So I very, very much wanted to embrace it because I understood the model, the benefits, and so it was almost, where do I sign?
Brilliant. And for me, I mean, as you guys know, I was definitely escaping from something which was, work-life balance had gone kind of completely pear-shaped for me. Similar kind of commuting stuff to you, Dave, where I'd ended up in a job that was 90-something miles away from home. The boys then were about 5 and 2, which, given one of them's just finishing uni now, is absolutely unbelievable that we all met each other that long ago. But I wanted to do something where I could be based from home. I wanted something that was kind of within, I was in charge of my own destiny, but I also, having considered doing something totally on my own, thought, actually, a little bit scary, and wanted the kind of community feel as well.
Yeah,
and, when I first was introduced to TAB through, actually, a guy who we all know, Kenton, I also got it because my former boss, who was a fantastic guy, still is, he'd been a member of a peer board and used to rave about it.
Right.
And funnily enough, when I was sat at his board table, that he would say the other board meeting I go to each month is the best meeting I have.
Right.
I thought, blimey, okay, there must be something in that. So I'd always thought if it was good enough for him, then the concept must be, must have legs. So that was why I made the decision, back then as well.
What were you, 21 back then?
I was a smidge over 21. Yes, yeah. So we all started in 2009, 2010, as Tom said, like really kind of interesting times economically, but SMEs need support irrespective of what's going on around them, and getting one of our franchises started is tough. Ups and downs, we've all had a few, probably continue to do so. So Jules, have you got an example of kind of, I suppose, how you found the first year or so in terms of building boards, and what kind of experience did you have?
It was easy.
Oh, fair enough. Dave.
I guess going back to the first question about I was running towards needing to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
So that absolutely motivated me, empowered me at the same time. So when I started, I came out of the blocks, as we then learned, at a very good pace. And I signed any business owner with a pulse at the time. But the point about the commitment is, people who are going to listen to this, they think, franchising, it all works in a very straightforward manner and you get lots of support there, ergo I'm going to be successful. That ain't the truth. The truth is you have to work hard. And I think in those first couple of years, in terms of hours and commitment to trying to build relationships, generate leads, all the networking that I did, I probably worked as hard as I'd ever worked in terms of commitment and time. But because I never had any insight to the SME world before then, so I had to get myself known and go everywhere. I went to opening of paper bags and went to every networking event. But I loved it. I loved the chase. I loved the challenge. I loved the fact that I did have the community at head office, and I'm sure later we'll talk about the first peer board we all sat together on. That was massively empowering and supportive. And yeah, I was pretty successful in signing members in the first year, 18 months. And you'll ask me in a little while what happened after that. And we'll come back to that, I'm sure. But yeah, I loved it. It's pressured. Anybody thinking about a franchise that's not going to take commitment, as I said, is foolish. Because you got to work. It's like anything.
Yeah.
You want to be successful, you've got to work hard.
It is funny that people do have some preconceptions around, franchising, kind of good and bad. But one of them can be, well, it's a business in a box. I just rock up. And
absolutely, the great thing about, and we coined the phrase in the early days about following the bouncing ball, the methodology that had been proven. Absolutely, if you want to build success, the beauty of a franchise is you have a model to follow, and we coined the phrase "follow the bouncing ball." And absolutely, you won't win every time, but more often is the case. You'll be successful.
Yeah. Dave, how about you? How was your kind of first 12 to 18 months?
So I think the analogy is like a speedboat. And to get a speedboat on the plane and move takes a lot of power and energy and fuel, and it's hard. But once it's on the plane, you can start making fine adjustments because it's moving at pace. I think the hard bit with the Tab franchise is getting it on the plane.
Yeah.
And I was fully committed. I did lots of networking, lots of telemarketing. Social media wasn't really around. I think when we launched,
It was a long time ago.
Neither was the iPhone, Dave.
15 years ago.
Only Express.
And yeah, great highs and great lows. But I got a couple of boards up and running, I think, within 6 months. And then I felt I was on the plane and I was moving. And I've proven to myself, my wife especially, that I can actually make a success of this. Because she put a lot of faith in me. Because initially the cash flow is bad because you just shelled out a load of money on a franchise and training. And there's no guarantee you're going to make any. I just felt it was something I wanted to do, I'd be good at. And, as it happened, it worked well. But boy, was it hard work.
Yeah. Tom, how about you?
Yeah, I think that, I absolutely agree with that. I signed loads of the wrong people to start with. I two things that I learned a huge amount, still do. But I think two things really. Make sure you've got a big enough war chest. So that you don't feel too stressed. I must sign this person because they always turned out badly if you do that. And the other is managing your own head, self-confidence, and you can't dictate how to do that. But once that happens and it suddenly clicks, then it's sort of what you're referring to, I think. But I don't employ anybody, and I only work with people I like, so it isn't work, is it?
And you've managed to maintain that mantra for 15 years, haven't you?
Yeah, I did sign one or two people about 30,
Realise you didn't
30
like.
or 40, actually, who I shouldn't have signed. But there are a lot of people who need help and can't afford to pay you. And it's a terrible temptation to start with to sign them up. But yeah, I one of our colleagues used to have the mantra in his own head that membership of Tab is a privilege, not a right.
Yes.
And they have to apply to join, not just. But yeah, lots of other stuff really.
And I know for a fact we've all had some comedic moments as we've built our businesses, some of which are probably not appropriate for this audience and this podcast. But if there is anything that any of you feel like sharing, Tom, do you want to have a little go at something?
Well, actually, yes, it involves two of you two as well. In the old days, particularly, we still do it occasionally, we had things called taster boards, which are where somebody who might be interested in finding out more, you invite them to have usually a breakfast meeting, of half a dozen or a dozen of them, and you run a board for 2 hours. And David had managed to nail down 12 people who were supposed to be coming. I could still see 12 bacon butters lined up on the table, and only 3 of them turned up. And he was beside himself with rage, and Ed and I had to...
I did take it very personally, Tom.
You do?
Yeah.
And we had to physically restrain him from ringing him up and telling him they're all a bunch of...
So.
Yeah.
Whilst he was eating his 10th bacon butty.
And you get used to it. But, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember receiving that. I can remember where I was sat, which car I was in, which car park in York when you phoned me incandescent around the temerity of people to say, yes, I'm going to turn up and then not turn up. I think probably 15 years later you've calmed down.
Just gradually. I remember him at least 3 weeks later regurgitating the story at our peer board as well, and he was equally as incensed and raised.
But the good news is, of the 3, one of them actually became one of my members.
Well, there you go. It's not the quantity.
So it's not all such a bad thing.
Yeah. Jules, how about you? Anything
Oh,
amusing?
lots. As you say, not repeatable on here. Not least things that we get up to in the community. That sounds terrible, but just the supportive nature of what we all do. And in one of those occasions, you've heard this story before, but our good friend and colleague, and was number 4 or 1 at the time, Nick Howcroft, used to do an after-dinner speech at our annual conference. That was at that time about 10 of us, and it's grown, I'm pleased to say, not having to 50 plus, but he chose on this one occasion, I think it was year 3, he chose to provide some awards one evening after our dinner, and I can't remember what the other awards were because mine completely threw me and knocked me aback, but he provided me with an empty bucket of glue, or with a bucket of glue, that evening, and that was to represent, as I referenced in your first question, the fact that I need to consider the glue that sticks members to me and keeps members on board. And we all had a good laugh about it, and I proceeded to carry this bucket of glue into the bar and treat it to a drink. But I remember waking up the next morning, literally seeing this plastic bucket at the end of on the bedside table in the hotel, and going, I get the message. And in Nick's humour, I know he meant a personal note to me, and I've talked about it ever since. And if we get onto it, it was a turning point for me in my tab journey. So,
Yeah.
But humorous, and Nick's probably very, very grateful that I took it well.
Yes. It could have gone one way or the other.
Could have gone one way or the other,
fairly
absolutely.
well.
Fairly well, yeah. No, I did take it well, eventually.
Thanks, Jules. Dave?
Well, not so much humorous, but one of my big learnings was when you start out, you're spending all your time on member recruitment, is meeting people, talking to people, and seeing if they're right to join. And then when people start joining, I was feeling, crikey, they're paying me money now. I better know all the answers.
Yeah.
And I started worrying about this because I've never been a management consultant. I've always had jobs previously. And it was that, but then it took me about 2 years, and I can't remember, some wise person told me about, turn off the problem-solving engine, Dave. You don't need to know all the answers. What you need to do is facilitate fantastic board meetings and coach people, because they probably know the answers themselves. But that probably took the first 2 years of my tab journey to understand that, and I think that took the stress level down quite a lot from expecting I should know everything about everything, and clearly I don't.
And haven't since. I remember that because it was Paul Dickinson who gave you the advice around
Was
the
it Paul?
Yorkshire Beer Board.
Was it? Okay.
It was, yes.
Don't need to know the answers, just need to know the questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Jules, you just referenced the fact that all of us probably got to a point where we thought, right, despite how hard this has been, we feel like we've kind of got there. There's a turning point. It's different for all of us in terms of the pace at which that happened and how it was triggered. But can you remember, Dave, when you got to the point where you thought, okay, I've now got this nailed. You've got your boat kind of on the plane, as you were saying.
I think for me it was when I launched the second board, because being in Leeds, I remember I had people that were running marketing agencies, and I couldn't put two of the same sector on the same board. So I set up a second board and got that launched, and then I had a bit of a really strong pipeline and started considering the third board. And at that stage, I thought, this is going well. It was the two boards up, running, working well, the pipeline for the third board, and I really felt that, in my case, my speedboat was planing, and I was moving at a good pace.
Yeah. Jules, similar?
Yeah. I think within the first 2.5, 3 years, I got to 5 boards, which was on reflection. I ran too quickly and fell off the edge. But I think similarly, when you get that traction, I know now with new franchisees, it's all very much focused in their first 2 years on, or first year, getting to those 2 boards. And that is a shift. That is a tipping point, the 2 boards. Where you're honing your skill, you're honing your art, you're improving your facilitation, you're listening more in one-to-one. So, yeah, the two, 3 boards is a significant tipping point.
Yeah.
In your level of confidence and what you can then focus on in terms of retention and all of the things that make them stick, as I've discovered, was the thing to focus on, apparently.
Yeah, indeed. Tom, how about you?
Yeah, I would agree about the second board. I think, though, that you do get confidence, but you go on to the next stage of coming to terms with the fact that some of them will resign, so that it goes up and down. I remember the 4 of us used to have meetings every quarter, called ourselves the 4 Musketeers. And fortunately, there was no occasion when all 4 of us were at the bottom.
Yeah.
But it's usually one of us was, and the others would say, yeah, it's okay, it happens. And that, all part of the community, is really, really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think if I can add to that, I think one of the reasons I wanted to get involved with the franchise, because I didn't really understand franchising before I met I thought it was all about Pizza Hut, and, McDonald's and so on. But it was the sense of being part of something bigger than just me. And the thing the thing I love about our community is we don't compete with each other. We are all trying to help each other get better at what we do, share the highs, the lows. And that when I got involved in the early days was, and still is, absolutely huge part of why this is such an enjoyable experience.
I think, just back to the 4 Musketeers, us 4. When did we do it? Was after 2 years in? I think that represented a tipping point as well for me, because we'd got the 2 years under our belt. We were more about benchmarking than problem solving and learning off one another, and we take our topics as usual to our peer board. But I think the 4 of us representing the collaborative nature and was a tipping point as well in my journey, because you were all months ahead of me, and a few months ahead of me in joining the franchise, but it's all about being prepared to benchmark against your peers and against you 3. Fortunately, I was surrounded with people who knew what they were doing, or told me so. Anyway,
That was somebody else you met.
yeah.
All right.
And continue to tell you that, don't we?
Yeah. And I'm consistently 15 years in gullible.
So as the now franchisor, I've obviously had to get myself much more familiar with loads of other franchise models, and I think we're, if not unique, pretty close to it in as much as we completely practice what we preach. So the service we deliver to our members, we do ourselves in terms of having our own peer boards still. So franchisees meeting monthly, same groups, and learning and kind of sharing with each other. What was the best thing about the peer board, or the peer boards, because you've each now sat on various different ones over the 15 years, but what's the best thing about having a peer board as a franchisee, Dave?
Well, I think it's about having people that understand you, where you're at with your journey. They're not judging you. But with all our peer boards at the start of the year, we share our plans for the year, and both our personal plans, our business plans. everybody knows everyone wants to achieve in their business and their lives that year. And we've had big highs, tears along the way, but you feel like you're with a group of people in the trenches with you. And we're all trying to help each other genuinely achieve our goals or aspirations for that year. And that is, I've sat on, I don't know how many different groupings within the 15 years, but everybody's trying to help everybody else, and that's just fantastic.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Jules, how about you?
Echo that. We talk to our members, and when we're in the recruitment process, we talk about holding the mirror up. And I've been very fortunate, again, talked about this over the years, to certainly 3, maybe 4, certainly 3 of the boards. I think I've only sat on 3 or 4 over the years, but 3 have been instrumental in my journey over the 15 years. I genuinely would not have been through building a franchise and selling it and then staying involved in the business, and all the personal journeys that you've heard over the years that I've been on, without that focus that the peer board gives you, and the tough love sometimes, and the recognition that you're shying away from something when this is clear and present that you should be focused on. Typically, your own well-being and your own personal tank. It's easy to go and exert your energy on your members and focus on them, but what my peer boards have done over the years is focus on me, and that's been massively important. Yeah, massively. Yeah.
That's tank, as in petrol tank, not chieftain, is it?
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Although I could have done with the chieftain tank sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what we tell the members. It's having permission to be vulnerable, which is really important. But I'm getting a lot of support, but also getting a lot of challenge. And I describe it to potential members as a cross between Dragon's Den and group therapy. And it's both of those things. And they won't let you get away with committing to something which you don't then do, nor should they. Because you're not accountable. If you work for yourself, you can procrastinate forever, can't you?
Absolutely.
So they are the only people, really, to whom you're accountable.
I thought when you said the vulnerability bit there, and if I think back to the very first peer board that all of us sat on, my sense is that it took us at least 6 months.
Oh, absolutely.
Probably more for someone to be truly vulnerable on that peer board. And then that, kind of, it almost enabled everyone else to think, okay, the trust is now there. We can actually all be vulnerable. And the point at which you can be is the point at which you then kind of leap forward again, isn't it?
Well, that's true for our own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it is 100%.
Yeah.
The forming, norming, and the storming element of the peer board.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're 15 years in. Some stuff has remained the same, and that's no bad thing. But obviously, plenty has changed. What Jules? What do you think have been the biggest changes that you've seen in kind of 15 years
within the franchise?
Yeah.
First of all, the thing that we stuck to is our core values and our core basics around what we provide. So it's not chopped and changed. But I think of what online, you'll be interested to hear about this, Dave, our business builder's blueprint that has developed over the years, and our use of behavioural assessment in DISC, but particularly the blueprint. I wasn't an early adopter, taking the mickey out of Dave. I wasn't an early adopter to it because I didn't believe it was I guess arrogantly something I didn't know how to provide already in terms of what it represented. But now it's just the technology. There's nothing out there like it. So if somebody Googled, give me a good strategic planning tool for business, it ought to take you to our business builder's blueprint. So the level of commitment that both you guys as UK franchisor and our head office in the States commit to continual development, continual improvement is massive. And I think from me seeing probably the peer board, the one-to-one, and then the technical support on our online tools, that probably in that order, I probably put the peer board and the tools at the same level in terms of their value for the members now. So it's been immense.
Tom, how about you?
What's changed? Nearly everything for the better. The training is light years ahead of what it was when we started.
Training.
Yeah, well, and it's something that repays going back on every few years, actually. So that's great. The whole knowledge centre and the accumulated wisdom from various franchisees as well as head office. There's a whole bank of stuff, so if you need to know about time management or something technical, there's something there to help you. And there's a wider community from whom you can learn. I think there are one or two things that one regrets. I mean, when you start, there is only a few of you, and you're a happy band of brothers, like Henry V before Ashigul. And you inevitably lose that as you get bigger. But that can't be avoided. And the four of us actually don't meet very often these days, which I still regret. But yeah, and the whole international thing as well, of course. We now in, 20 countries, is it?
Bit more.
Whereas it was only 2.
1.5.
There was a Canadian
Venezuela,
one
wasn't
guy
it?
in Venezuela. And some of our trips to Denver are legendary, aren't they? But lots of things have changed, nearly all of them for the better. And it's been interesting and puzzling to observe how some people who signed up for franchisees, you thought they'd be a slam dunk, have dropped off the twig. And you can't predict who it's going to be, can you?
Yeah, I think the change, I was going to say the training is light years ahead of when we started, and also the launch support for people starting out, because I'm now getting involved a little bit, helping new folk get up and running. I think that's just absolutely light years ahead. I think the other thing is we as a brand are far better known in the UK. When we started out, the brand was only really known in North America. And so we were hitting it cold. But the constant has been the quality of support from head office, from Suzanne, who I think will come on the podcast later, from Paul and Joe, and now with you and Mags. I think, and the team is literally there to help us, as well as finding new franchisees, is just to help us grow better and better businesses to help us achieve our own visions. And it's been, through those 15 years, it's been absolutely outstanding.
Yeah. I think probably the only thing I would add / emphasise on that in terms of change is that international element, because obviously we've grown in the UK, but the fact that someone in Chile or Israel or Romania can have a sensationally good idea and then we'll hear about it in short order and make some decisions on, okay, is that something that we want to introduce internationally or just in the UK, or a version of it. And that's amazing. And actually also then you've got the community of members, you've got thousands of them around the world, obviously, who can now message each other. Maybe a construction business in the UK can message a construction business in Canada. They're not competing with each other, but I've got this particular issue in this sector, can you help me? And the fact that it's one tab member to another, there's that exchange of trust, which is amazing when they don't know each other, but you're a member of tab, I'm a member of tab, you must be okay, is kind of where they start from. And the fact that we've now got the kind of tech to enable that happen much more easily than when we first started, which would have been via a HQ, via a franchisee to a member, and it can be direct now, is great, actually. Yeah. Hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. This is a 15-year tab exclusive. So, very pleased, Suze, that you've joined us in place of Tom. I wasn't going to say that, nor would I. Suze, just tell us kind of what you do and how long you've been involved with tab.
So I'm part of the Tab Furniture and the longest standing Tab UK person now. So joined right back at the beginning. previously worked with Joe and Paul, as you know, the founders of Tab in the UK, and Tom, actually. So Tom was the managing partner of the accountancy practice where I worked for far too long, doing various marketing jobs. And then, so when Joe and Paul were setting up Tab, Joe said, "Do you want to come and join us?" And I jumped at the chance of that. So loved the idea of what Tab did. Hadn't heard anything similar before. As I think it was Dave said earlier about franchising, it was all about McDonald's and pizzas. So interested in the franchising concept as well. And also being part of a small business, not had any experience of that before. So that was great. But the best thing, actually, was it gave me an opportunity to have a dog.
Yes.
Because Joe and
and
I...
in the office.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Joe and I bullied Paul into letting us have an office dog. So that's
Yes.
when Izzy came along. So Tab changed my life.
Yeah.
There
And
we go.
this is.
Yeah, ticking every box.
Yeah.
Yeah, so responsible for marketing initially, and then sort of my role sort of melded into a bit of all sorts now as the team's grown.
What's your title, because you like it so much?
Head of Franchise Support.
It is.
Got you to thank for that.
Yes, you
For
have.
your creativity.
Well, said no one ever.
It beat mine.
So we were just talking in the break there around what makes a great franchisee. And, there are a lot of people who have made real successes of a Tab franchise with quite different kind of traits and characteristics, and certainly kind of skill sets and experience. But Suze, I'll start with you then. So from a kind of HQ perspective, what do you look for in terms of something that is going to make a really great Tab franchisee?
So a few things. So one of the main things that sticks out, and it's sometimes a bit hard to establish this when you first meet somebody, but somebody who's going to behave like a business owner, not an employee.
Good point.
Sort of owning, the franchise is there to, obviously with the processes and, the massive support of head office and the rest of the network. But actually you're building your own businesses, aren't you? And taking responsibility for your actions, your activity. That business owner mindset is, front and foremost of what makes, great franchisee. Coupled with, as we all know how important the community is, being a great member of that community that's going to, give great advice, give great support, but take advice from the community as well. It's quite simple, but not everybody has that or sort of recognises that.
Yeah, great answer. Top that, Jules.
Thanks very much. Echo all of that. I think I referenced the bouncing ball earlier on. So I think what makes a good franchisee is somebody who's prepared to listen, somebody who cares, somebody who's prepared to follow a process and not try and reinvent the wheel. And Suze and I have talked a lot about this on our catch-up calls, because I support new franchisees, amongst other things. And I know this is difficult to typically ascertain in discovery days and the start, but ultimately someone who has a sense of credibility about them, as an aura, call it experience. But for me, the person, I can think of one relatively new franchisee not too far away from here in Mr. Williams, that when you walk into a room, he's the type of guy you want to go and chat to, and he's the type of guy you'd want to listen to. So I don't mean to any sense say we've all got that credibility, far from it, because it's not the one thing that makes a successful franchisee. But for me, that stands you out from our competitors, of which there are a lot nowadays. It's that aura, that credibility, that experience, therefore, that a franchisee can leverage and behave like a business owner.
Yeah, agree with all of that. Dave?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think also they've got to be curious, good with people, want to meet people, want to make connections, want to work hard making connections, however those connections are made. And I think ultimately want to make a difference to that that person's lives.
Yeah.
Because there's sometimes decisions that might be right for our business are not right for our members, and constantly we have to do what is right for them. And so being on it, and then I mean, I view with all new members, this is part of at least a 5-year journey. This is a long-term journey, and I'm committing part of my life to helping them with their life and the people around them. And so it's being willing to go on a journey through all the highs and lows, not just for yourself, but for them and all the people around them. And not everybody takes those longer term views. I think they might just take shorter term monetary views that may well not be the right thing to do. And it's hard initially when you meet people to put your finger on it. I agree with what Jules was saying about there's a certain presence people have, a credibility where they've kind of earned the right to help. And it's a bit hard to put your finger on where that comes from, but when you meet the right people, you know they've got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you know what?
Not, sorry, it's not about age either, is it?
No.
It's not about age.
You know, that's not a
No,
major
absolutely.
thing.
I know when I'm, having initial conversations with prospective new franchisees, I absolutely want them to have that kind of presence, but often what I don't want is kind of a really overt way.
Oh,
sort of
absolutely.
pushing it at me.
Yeah.
The kind of quiet confidence. I think for us, if you look around our room with all of our franchisees in it, you think actually there's some obviously incredible, bright people, but actually they're not wanting to push stuff in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're not is salesmen or women. We're not in the old age fashion, I guess. We're not in people's faces. We're interested. We listen. We care.
Yes.
We have a conversation.
Yeah.
It's a very fine line, though, isn't it, between overly confident and communicative and whatever, to having that credibility or not.
Yeah.
And I guess for you guys as franchisees, you can't always tell, you can't always put your finger on that from day one. So
it's really difficult, and that's why when me and Mags and Suze and the rest of the team work through that kind of due deal with prospective franchisees. It's multiple interactions. We've learned over the years as well what to look for and what to be a little bit wary around, and just trying to keep the filter really, really tight, and be true to ourselves on that. But sometimes that's it's easier said than done, isn't it? So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to just talk a little bit about, I suppose what TAB has meant for, particularly you two individually as, as franchisees, and I'll, maybe talk a little bit about that too. But Jules, you've gone on a kind of journey from, franchisee to then selling it to then not wanting to leave and sort of remaining in, the kind of role that you're doing now as part of Max's gang in the Midlands. So just talk to us around that a little.
So when I started my journey with TAB, I referenced one of your earlier questions about chasing in income. So Paul and Joe at the time took me on as a head office contract facilitator on the basis and on the understanding that within 2 years I would sign a franchise agreement and have built up the war chest to do so. And I did that, and then that level of support was massively continued for not just me but for other people wanting to get involved. So then 2012 franchisee, and part of my personal vision at the time and had developed was at the age of 55. Gasp! What? Are you 55? No, I'm 60 now. But at the age of 55, my personal vision was to get me into a place of freedom of choice, and that is typically about time and money. And going back to the relevance of our peer board support, it was the one in Birmingham I sat at the time that switched me on to the idea of selling the business. I thought I'd either, continue forever or just when I finished, I finished type of thing. Don't know why I hadn't thought of selling it, because I didn't think a one-man band, I suppose, would have a lot of value to it. But my colleagues in the Birmingham Peer Board challenged me on my thinking around what my personal vision and how to get to it might entail, and selling the franchise became an idea of mine. or I embrace that idea. And so, very fortunate in 2019, March, met Max, who was at our facilitator conference. Damien Hughes spoke at it, I remember. And met Max. He'd done his due diligence with me. He was buying the territory next to me. And he and I had a conversation in the July, I think, after he'd become a franchisee about my exit plan. 55 would be 2020. And he said, he basically said, well, if the person you're talking to doesn't offer you what you want, I will. Mm-hmm. It's basically the outcome of the lunch that we had in the July of 2019, and he set no conditions on me remaining involved. I knew I wanted to remain involved to some degree, because from hero to zero with doing nothing would have, other than the voluntary sector non-exec roles I've got, I didn't fancy that. So Max and I concluded the sale at the end of September in 2019, very, very short period of time. And then I settled into one board at the time from having 5 at one time. We transitioned a series of my boards to one of our CFs at the time anyway, to Jimmy, and then the additional ones to Max, or the remaining ones to Max, leaving me with one board. And it was massive, because there am I in March 2020. We all know what happened then. In the world, sat with one board and a couple of non-exec roles, and thinking, oh, what do I do now then? But COVID hits, you're giving your time to, thank goodness, the reduced number of members that I did have, because how I would have supported 20 odd members, I don't know, through that first sort of 6 or 8 weeks of COVID. But my journey to being a CF was, I think, a fairly smooth one. It was good to be part of a team in the East Midlands with Max, and it remains great to be part of that team. And then I get another key conversation that I had with Max in 2022, I think, back end of 22. Yeah, I could feel myself starting to get a little bit bored. I was very clear, and had been for a number of years, on what my purpose is, which is to help people. That's my why. Mm-hmm. And I was beginning to realise, as life was settling down into a certain pace, that my best days were the days I was helping somebody. Mm. And so I had lunch one of those days in the back end of 22 with Max, and he said, well, obviously, why don't you do more of it then? And right, that's a good idea. So I did more of it, and now I've got the 2 boards and extended my coaching only and non-exec work, and probably, if you put all the days together and the hours together, probably work 3 out of 4 weeks a month. Mm-hmm. And it continues to tick the boxes because of the fulfilling life TAB provides us with the people that we work with and the community that we're part of. So I love it. Yeah. And now, having got to 55 and thought, oh, that's it, and certainly by 60, which I was in March, thinking that's it, I can't see myself stopping, because I love it. Why would I not continue to love it? So my mindset has changed.
Well, I'm very pleased we got that recorded.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. 57 minutes and 54 minutes in. Cut that bit.
Dave, how about you? What's it done for you and your family?
So, under the work-life balance, I realised I've run a number of businesses, but none were within 60 miles of my house. And so part of my TAB journey was not spending my life sat on motorways. Mm-hmm. And so I bought Leeds North, where I live, and then got that business up to, I think, 4 different boards. But then realised I was the limiting factor in the growth of my own business, because it was Dave in North Leeds. And I got a very talented facilitator coach on one of my boards who was looking to do other stuff, and said, well, why don't you step off the board, become one of my facilitators in my Leeds business, and you can facilitate that board, and I'll help you get another one up and running, which she did very successfully. we got it up to about 30 odd, over 30 members, 6 boards. And I then thought, what I'd like to do is actually run a bigger tab business. And I had the opportunity 6 years ago to buy Central Leeds. So, and the idea was to run that as a much bigger business. I've worked with different facilitators, and for a whole variety of reasons, all of which were good reasons, it didn't work out with each of the facilitators. And so running 2 franchise territories on your own is quite hard work. And I had the opportunity last summer of selling Central Leeds back to a top guy called Mark Williams. And so I'm now running 1 board, 1 territory, 3 full boards, and absolutely thoroughly loving it. Interestingly, I've got a group of my old university friends, 5 of us, and 4 of them have retired. And they all look at me and think, well, why are you still working? And I look at them and say, well, what do you do all day long? And I do it because I love what I do, like Jules said, and it's my reason to get out of bed in the morning. And yeah, I mean, I don't see myself slowing down. It keeps my brain going. It keeps me enthused for life. So why would I stop doing what I really enjoy? So that's where I've got to. So, and I also work, actually, interestingly, I've decided during COVID to invest in marketing. So I have a part-time marketing lady who just does all the marketing stuff that I'm no good at and don't want to do. And so there's a bit of a team effort there. And it is just great fun. I think we're making a significant difference. And so, yeah, I'm going to keep doing it.
Good.
That is also recorded.
It's 2 out of 3 bagged. So,
I'm handing my notice in this afternoon. It's all too good to be true.
So I want to ask you as well, Suze, 15 years now, so you must like parts of it.
I just don't like change.
What do you like then?
Actually, there's been loads of change, hasn't there, over the years, and that's been great, and probably why I've stayed here as long as I've. Love what we do, love the community. One particular bit I really like, though, obviously with a franchise, you've got a process that you're following, but we're not arrogant enough to think that we know everything. And we learn so much from you guys, out in the field and doing things. So when we're, quite a lot of the things we've implemented, we've heard you guys have, done that in the field, and we've adopted that. You've proven some things worked, and then we've shared that. So the community improves because of you lot, as well as, Tab being a great thing as well. And one big thing for me that's changed, I obviously came in of marketing manager, is how, Dave, you referred to it earlier, is how marketing's changed. We did a little bit of LinkedIn stuff, didn't we? But posting stuff, we weren't using it as a lead generator. So all the digital marketing, the social media has changed hugely. So I'm pleased, we've had digital execs, and we've got Tara on board, to do that, because it's a very different beast now to really what it was when I started.
Yep.
So I love seeing the results of all that, but it's very different kind of job now. But that's great.
And I think that I obviously see it through those 15 years through 2 different lenses. One is as a franchisee when I first started out with you guys, and then halfway kind of through that 15-year journey got the opportunity to buy the UK. And so if I think about how much has changed just in the last 8 years with my franchisor hat on, that pace of change, which obviously everyone says all the time, but it just continues to accelerate, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So and then you have big global events like COVID going on, and obviously the world continually changes and arguably evolves, doesn't it? And we've got to keep up with that, haven't we? But the fact that we're plugged into this network of our members who are all bright, forward-thinking people, we learn from them as much as
absolutely.
They learn from us, and then obviously learning from each other and our international colleagues is it's amazing actually that we've become this network now of thousands of businesses around the world, from where we started 15 years ago in the UK with 3 people in an office and a dog, which is quite cool, really,
It's,
isn't it?
it's fair to say the brand hasn't stood still in that 15 years.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Which leads me onto my next question. So just a couple more, but this one is an important one. Dave, I'll start with you. What are you most proud of since you started your tab journey?
I think it's making a real difference to people's lives. I've had a number of members and especially it was during COVID, where a lot of people were sat at home questioning, why am I doing this? What am I trying to get out of my life? And we've really helped people think that through, answer that. I've had various members who've sold their businesses, have now retired. And, I feel proud that I and the boards have helped in some small way change their lives, the lives of the people around them. And, and we keep doing that. I think that's what I'd be most proud of.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Suze, how about you?
Probably the community. Being a peoply person, I guess I would say that. But just how you all help and support one another, and us at head office as well. We had that resilience panel, didn't we, at conference recently with 4 facilitators. You were on there, Jules. In case you didn't remember that, it was a while ago. And just that the sharing and the openness from that panel was fabulous, and being in that safe environment, just said such a lot. And that's the same for everybody. And I hear it, when you talk about your relationship with your members and your members on your boards, it's clear that there's that personal connection as well as bringing business stuff. So I think that community effort is just fantastic.
Totally agree with that. Jules, how about you?
Yeah, absolutely agree with both of them. That we said early on that what we do changes lives, and that's never to be taken for granted. But when you hear it, and when you get the husband of a member or the wife of a member or the partner, or in some instances the children come up to you at events that we run and they say what you and Tab provide is changed our lives, both relationship wise and circumstance wise, and the life they lead as a family, that's and that's never to be taken for granted. And that, nor is that a measure of the success that we're having. But to hear those things, it's a pinch me moment, and you go, wow, because I don't think any of us in the community have that air of arrogance that, hey, look at what we do. We don't. We take nothing for granted. And reflecting in that, a proud moment for me personally, but reflected in the community of members that I developed, was in Denver a few years ago when I won a retention award, which probably, as Jason, our CEO, said at the time, represented a significant shift in my fortunes, and I alluded to earlier. But that for me, whilst being very proud to win it or be awarded it, also reflected on, I must be doing something right with my members, and Tab must be doing something right. And that was personally a key milestone for me as well, because they stay with you for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's the same thing but different audience, because obviously now my audience is franchisees. And if you look around the room when we're all together in a conference or whatever it might be, just feeling like people's lives in that room have been changed for the better.
Absolutely.
As you guys have talked about, as a result of investing in and then working bloody hard in a Tab franchise is very cool, actually.
It is.
So just going to wrap up with what we see in the future. How do you see the next 2 or 3 years, Dave?
Well, I think it will be more of the same. Just meeting good business owners, business leaders, helping them grow and develop. I think one thing is, as times of sort of economic uncertainty, as the waters maybe get choppier with things going on in the world right now, that's not the time to be alone. I think as things get more challenging, as decisions become more important, doing it within a group that's got your back, I think becomes more and more and more important. So I think 15 years on, we've become even more relevant than we were when I first started out on this journey. And I think that will continue to grow.
Yeah, great. Sue?
I'm really interested to see where AI goes. You know, it's hard to imagine, really, certainly not just from the sort of marketing point of view. So, you know, it's just coming on in leaps and bounds, isn't it, all the time? I had an approach the other day from somebody who does AI selling, so telemarketing, and it's not a real person you're speaking to, and it was good. I mean, you could still tell it was AI, but you think that these things are going to just be developed, so how will that be in another, you know, year or two? But I struggle to think that what we do can be replaced by AI, because we're always going to, I think, need human interaction. So, and I think that's where what we do becomes even more important, to have those face-to-face connections and emotion, which, okay, I'm sure AI will get there with that as well at some point. Maybe I won't be here then.
There's a happy thought. Jules?
Well, there's irony there, because I was looking forward to being replaced by AI in the next 2 to 3 years. You know, we look back 15 years, and it's not that long a time, really. And we look back to the challenges the world's faced, the SMEs have faced, the UK's faced, and I'm always of the opinion and of the message to prospects is that don't worry about the macro stuff, because you're never going to influence or control that. Focus on the micro stuff, and the micro stuff is people need help and continually need help. And if I could, you know, change one thing over the next couple of years to see things develop further, is that one, we have more members because they realise they need the help, and two, because of it, our network grows with franchisees and contract facilitators, because the previous question of what we're most proud, it's we change lives, and I'd love to see more of that happening, because I can, you know, it not necessarily me doing more, but colleagues doing more, and the impact that we have, and you know, the PR that generates will represent our brand going from strength to strength. That's what I look forward to.
Great. Changing lives feels like a pretty decent point to call a halt to these fun proceedings. Dave, thank you. Jules, thank you. Sue,
Welcome.
Thank you. Tom, off camera, thank you very much indeed. Thanks very much for listening. This has been an exclusive Tab podcast celebrating 15 years in the UK. We hope you've enjoyed it.